Northwest of downtown LA, nestled between Temple Street and Beverly Boulevard, is the vibrant neighborhood of Historic Filipinotown. In 2002, the neighborhood was designated as historic and is full of sites important to Filipino-American history. Community spaces and organizations that provide programs and services for residents, numerous places for worship and faith, such as the oldest to serve Filipino Christians, colorful public art all over, including at Unidad Park with the largest Filipino-themed mural in the country designed by artist Eliseo Silva. And so many delicious places to eat traditional Filipino foods, like the popular dollar hit serving Filipino street food on skewers. Let's hear from 3 community members who each share stories about the people and places of historic Filipinotown. Joseph Bernardo, a community member and one of the individuals who helped designate the neighborhood as historic, discusses how Filipino migration to LA over time formed a community.
Filipino Americans, started migrating here in large numbers after the 1924 Immigration Act. Mainly they were recruited here as laborers, recruiting as agricultural workers. But a lot of the Filipinos actually worked in urban areas in the service sector and settled in kind of temporary housing in Little Manila, it was adjacent to Little Tokyo at the time, right? And then during the war, a lot of kind of the Filipino laborers started migrating and settling around the Bunker Hill area because they had low-income housing at the time. And then after the war, many Filipino Americans started settling in what is now known as the Historic Filipinotown area. And they started buying property there, buying houses there. It was relatively cheap. It was relatively close to kind of their former kind of Filipino American center in Los Angeles. And fast forward to 1965, when you have another Immigration Act, which allowed many more Filipino Americans, a more diverse set, like class diversity, much more women were allowed to kind of come to the United States to the 70s and 80s, where there was kind of a growing sense of multiculturalism, ethnic community empowerment. Fast forward again, another 20 years. Then Councilmember Eric Garcetti was running for city council, and one of his campaign promises was to finally establish a historic Filipinotown. He won, and in 2002, he successfully introduced a motion to establish historic Filipinotown.
Jocelyn Giaga Rosenthal, resident community advocate and daughter of the late Remedios V. Giaga, speaks about the historic designation of the neighborhood and her mother's legacy.
Well, she was very active in the community, but I guess the one common thread throughout her work was her concern for senior citizens. And that has been sort of a defining theme in many of the different activities that she engaged with. In fact, she was appointed by Governor Jerry Brown in the 70s to the State Commission on Aging. She was co-founder of FASG. That's one of the 3 legacy organizations in Historic Filipinotown. FASG is the acronym for Filipino-American Service Group Incorporated. They acquired a building which is about 3 blocks from here, and it started out as shelter for veterans, Filipino veterans. She was also president of the first Filipino organization in this area at least, in 1945, established by the first wave of immigrants, elderly Filipinos, and it's down the street from here. It's called Filipino-American Community of LA, and they still have a center. When I became involved, really more intensely involved with this area, I met, fortunately, our councilman then, Eric Garcetti, who was very committed to his campaign pledge to the people of this area to pursue the designation of this area. And at the time, there were other areas with large centers of Filipino residents, immigrants, who were vying for the designation of Filipinotown. You know, they said, well, there are not that many Filipinos who live in this area, and so there was a little bit of a competition. And so our committee, I think, brilliantly said, well, let's name it Historic Filipinotown.
Maria Carmel Valandez, Youth Programs Manager with Search to Involve Filipino Americans, shares how the organization formed and how they support residents today.
So SIPA was founded in the 70s, specifically like 1972, and it was founded by a group of UCLA Asian American Studies professors to create programs and services for the Filipino community in historic Filipinotown. They found that a lot of youth were involved in gangs and sort of just not really living up to their fullest potential at that time, and also didn't have a better understanding of their Filipino identity. So this group of Filipino professors came together to create these resources for youth to ensure that they were better leaders for their community. What we do is have a lot of social services for the families, for the community, so that includes youth programs like our summer programs, our after-school programs. We also have mental health programs that help, encourage mental wellness in the Filipino community and also other BIPOC communities, as well as small business and community economic development that helps small businesses rise up and give them support to succeed, and also have housing opportunities as well for folks in the community.
Today, the neighborhood is known as HiFi by locals and continues to represent the history of Filipino Americans. Here are a few sites to learn more about historic Filipinotown. Beep beep, let's make a paper jeepney together. Jeepneys are a popular form of transportation in the Philippines, known for having bright colors and designs. What will yours look like? You'll need the following materials: 1 cardstock sheet of paper, markers, or any other type of coloring tools you use, white glue, scissors, ruler, and optional sparkly sequins if you'd like. First, fold your paper in half, and then fold each half towards the center. Next, flip the paper over and fold each side like so. You have 6 different rectangles for your paper jeepney. Measure and cut 3 inches off the width, the short side of the paper. This will be for the tires and the front of the jeepney. Color the front and the back, or the large rectangle and rectangles 3 and 4. Think about all the different colors and shapes that you'll include. Cover the entire front and back of the jeepney. Get your short piece of paper and cut 4 different tires. Keep the other end for the front of the jeepney. Next, we'll color these and put our jeepney together. As you're gluing your jeepney pieces together, it's helpful to hold them to let it stick for a little bit and dry before you start gluing the other parts. Here's my finished jeepney. Where will you go in your jeepney ride? What will you explore in your neighborhood?